Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Joy Sistrunk of Premier Group, and today we're going to be talking about what does the path to forgiveness look like. First of all, some people are still wondering what are PPP funds. The PPP is the Paycheck Protection Program, which basically gave you 8 weeks of funding to cover payroll, salary employees, rent, utilities, and mortgage interest only. And if you use the funds in the percentages given, you're supposed to use 75% for payroll, 25% for rent, utilities, and mortgage interest, that amount would be forgiven. And what does forgiveness mean? It means you would not no longer owe these funds to the bank. The SBA would be forgiving these funds for you. But on the flip side, these funds are not tax deductible for you for your business. So that may have a different implication at a later point in time. The questions we're getting a lot of is, what can the PPP funds be used for? Well, they can be used, again, for salary. If you are a solopreneur or you're the only employee of the business, an entrepreneur, you could use it to pay yourself as a draw, or even some hazard pay. You could fund your retirement. What you could also do is use it for office rent. If you had a lease agreement in place as of February 15th, you could use it for utilities, including cell phone expenses, leases for, you use it for copier leases and for transportation, those kinds of utilities. So those are the types of expenses that are already included in the PPP funds if you want them to be forgiven. There are some things that are excluded, however. You cannot pay 1099 contractors. So if you have 1099 contractors, they were technically eligible for their own PPP funds, and so they would not be eligible for you to use the PPP funds on if you want the money to be forgiven. The other thing you cannot do is you cannot pay yourself more than $100,000 in a salary per year, or for this 8-week period, you cannot pay more than $15,836 in salary to any one person, yourself or anyone else included. You also cannot pay your mortgage principal. If you have a mortgage principal, if you're paying a mortgage or you own a building, you can only pay the interest. You cannot pay the principal. So those are some of the things that are excluded. Now, you may be saying, why do I even need to track this money? The reason you need to track it is because already they have arrested at least 5 people for fraud in the PPP program. One was trying to get almost $20 million from them. He was a Chinese national, and he was arrested last Thursday for that. Before that, we've seen there's a Love hip hop star who was arrested for getting a $2 million loan fraudulently. And even other people who've been arrested just for, who never actually got PPP funding, but they were trying to get the money and they used fraudulent documents. And so they being the bank and the SBA, are going to want to see, how did you spend this money? So we are encouraging you to put the money in either a separate bank account or a minimally used bank account, because we know that at some point they are going to ask for these bank statements. You're going to need to provide checks and invoices and receipts and proof of payment. So they're going to want to see, how did you spend this money? And you're going to have to be very detailed in order for it to be, the money to be forgiven. So it's very important that you have good documentation. You know exactly what you spent the money on. They also are going to be looking, if you have employees, they're going to want you to figure out exactly how many people there are that came up and how many employees you had on February 15th and how many you have as of June 30th are going to be 2 important calculations. And if you laid anyone off during this time and you haven't brought them back, that may cause you to have less forgiveness than what you should have. The other thing that people are now starting to see and realize is, some people got the economic injury disaster loan, and you probably got it and got a random deposit in your bank account for anywhere between $1,000 and $10,000. Well, that was the EIDL advance. And what happened with that is, we did that way back in March, and then we didn't hear anything. And then you started seeing people randomly get deposits. Well, when they came out with the PPP forgiveness spreadsheet, they told us that now that amount that you got as an advance has to be deducted from your PPP forgiveness calculation. So if you got $10,000 from an advance and $100,000 in the PPP, only $90,000 of that is now actually forgivable because that $10,000 cannot be forgiven. And people thought at one point it was going to be, it is tax-free, but it is not forgivable because you got it as an advance. So in fact, you got $110,000. So you now owe $10,000 on your PPP loan, no matter what. So I know that that's a lot of information. And today I actually have joined me my business advisor, Brett Simpson, because he is helping me field what I know are questions that are coming in on the chat and on the live about PPP funds, because there's so much information and I know it's very confusing. And so we are here to empower you and to assist you to understand forgiveness, to know what it looks like. And then most importantly, if that is what you need for your business, if you use the funds appropriately, we want to support you through the forgiveness process so that we can make sure you get the max amount of the loan forgiveness. So with that, Brent, are there any questions that have come in?
Yes, one of the questions that came in is around, being able to pay a person if they're under $100,000 in annual premium or annual salary, can they pay themselves from the PPP?
Yes, they can actually pay themselves up to that $15,000. So if you weren't, let's say your salary was $60,000, you can increase it to $100,000, provided that you're working more, which I believe we all are, because these times right now are pretty crazy. You can increase your salary to utilize the $100,000 the way you need to. And so that is an option.
All right. And for everyone who's watching, and right now you're thinking, I have some questions, this is the time you can share this live with your community, with other business owners that you know, with your staff. If you want to know if your staff has questions as it relates to it, business partners, this is a great time to share it because as Joy mentioned, I will be fielding the questions now while she provides answers. And from just a standpoint of being able to get a very high-ranking CPA on the line to answer these questions, this is a rare opportunity. So I would definitely implore everyone to take advantage of that. With that being said, we have a question that came in. What would be the best practices for a sole proprietor or single member LLC to appropriately show how monies are being spent? I know you touched on this and I know you actually have a system for this. So I'll let you answer it.
So we actually have created a PPP tracker form. What you want to be able to do is show how much money you spent on these various categories. So if you're a single member or a solopreneur, you will be writing yourself checks from your PPP funds to your personal account, but you also need to be tracking that so that at the end of the day, you're almost audit ready or tracking ready, so that when they come back with questions, you have all of your information together. And so you want to write a check to yourself and deposit it in your personal account, and then keep copies of that check front and back, because they're going to ask for that. And so then again, if you also will put the tracker, our PG tracker information in the chat box for you, so that if you want to also use our system to help you track the funds, it will assist you in making sure that you have all of the information ready when it is needed to be forgiven.
And this is a question I know a lot of people might be wondering. What is considered to be a minimally used account? Would it be a savings account? Is it a money market account?
A savings account or something you don't use often. And so why am I saying minimally used? It would be a savings account, or maybe an account that you have a few dollars in, but you're not using it all the time. Because what happens is, if you just put this money in your operating account and they say, well, what did you use it for? You're going to have a hard time explaining it to them, because they're usually in people's normal operating account. There's a lot of activity. And so you will have a hard time explaining what exactly you use the funds for. So it's better to separate it out, put it either in a brand new account or an account that you rarely use, so that when they ask you for those bank statements, it doesn't, there's no confusion on the other side when you're giving it to them.
All right. And so one of the questions is, if you have part-time W-2 employees, does their compensation count towards forgiveness as it relates to PPP?
Yes, it does. Any money so it's part-time or full-time, does not matter as long as you use the funds for PPE. Now, what they have recently said last week was that part-time employees do not count towards total headcount. So there's another whole calculation that has to be done to calculate how many people you had on staff as of February 15th, and then how many full-time people you had versus where you are on June 30th. Part-time people don't count or factor into that calculation, but their wages, what you're paying them every 2 weeks, definitely counts towards your forgiveness.
Okay. Now, for someone who is looking to get guidance, like some people just don't want to do it themselves. They want a firm like PG Services to represent them. If that were the case, do you all represent people who need help in understanding the PPP, IEDL? Because now it seems like there is a kindred or relationship between the two that didn't exist before.
There definitely is. So we have 3 ways that we work with people. People can either, one, purchase our tracker. That is for the do-it-yourself. It does have an accompanying video that will walk you through how to do the tracker. We also have a second package where you can have a one-on-one session with a member of our team, and they walk you through the tracker as well as answer any questions that you have. And lastly, we have a done-for-you package where we will literally gather every piece of documentation that we know they're going to ask for and present it to them when the time is right, when the forgiveness window opens, which will be sometime after July 1st. So we want you to be prepared and know exactly what it is. And so if you are struggling or feel like you need help with that, we do have a done for you package where we will take care of all of this information and calculate all these things for you. So you will know exactly what's going to happen when your package gets submitted.
All right. And it looks like people are starting to share the link because questions are coming in. Okay. So this question has a certain level of specificity to it. So let me read it the best I can. My PPP covered periods May 6th through July 1st, and I use a payroll service. Are funds paid for that service for W-2 gross wage employees covered?
So I think I'm answering 2 separate questions. One, depending on when your PPP came in, the SBA has actually issued additional guidance to say that if your wages do not match up to when you got your PPP funds, you can use what they're calling an alternative payroll period so that you can match funds to your PPP gross wages amount. So yes, you can do that. What you cannot do, if I understand the second question correctly, is your payroll cost, your payroll fee to that third party is not a deductible expense for PPP. It's not a forgivable expense. So if you pay your payroll provider with PPP funds for their fee, that is not something that can be forgiven. So I hope that answered the question. If not, please let me know.
Yes, and for individuals listening, if it sounds like there's more that you need, number one, let us know. If we can't answer, we will. 2, always remember you can contact the firm to get more guidance. So the second part to this is, if a person is using ACATS or ACH, how do you, I'm paraphrasing this for the person who wrote the question. Okay. How do you make sure that the money inside of the ACH, since it's already set up, is properly established so it qualifies for PPP?
Okay, great question. So this normally what we've advised our clients to do is this. When you're running payroll, you usually do it 2 or 3 days in advance. Once you know, one, your PPP funds should remain in a separate account. Wherever your normal payroll expenses have been coming from, which is normally either your operating account or your payroll account, you should leave them there. Have your provider pull from there. And when you run payroll, you would actually run your payroll report, see what your gross wages were, and then transfer the money from the PPP account to the operating account so those 2 things offset. And that's how you know that it will be forgiven, because you're transferring the exact amount of what are the gross wages for your PPP funds. Because remember, PPP funds cannot be used to pay payroll taxes.
Okay. And so the next question is, can we use a portion, specifically 25%, of the PPP for marketing of my business, or is it only for rent and utilities?
So it's only for rent and utilities. And the other thing that I want people to keep in mind, we have gotten we want everybody, as much as possible, we should want the money to be forgiven. But at the end of the day, you did still get a loan. So if you need to use it for other things that are business related, you can do that. It's just that they won't be forgiven. So in this case, marketing is not a permissible expense. So what does that mean? When you go to do your forgiveness calculation, if you use 25% of it for marketing, that portion would just not be part of your forgivable loan portion. It would just simply be a business expense that you used it for at 1%, because remember, that is the cheapest money you're ever going to get. And so then you would just make your regular payments on what you needed to use the money.
Okay. Now, this is a question I think some business owners may be thinking. I'm going to hopefully ask for them. If a person did do what you said and they took it just knowing that it's a 1% loan, and not only that, there's a grace period before you have to start paying for it, and on top of that, there is an extremely long period in which you have to pay it back, and they make the decision that they're just going to leave it as a loan, and they start to pay it back as if it were just a loan, are they less likely to be audited because they're paying it back as a loan?
Not necessarily, because what's going to happen is every person who got a loan, whether is forgivable or not, there is a certain percentage that they're going to deem that's going to be audited no matter what, whether it's forgivable or whether you keep it as a loan, because they're going to need to audit to make sure people did not have any fraud in their process, or that they didn't just miscalculate things, that people didn't overinflate the numbers just to get additional money. And so it does not, just because you keep it as a loan, it does not lessen your chances of being audited.
And that actually was a great point. So I hope everyone paid close attention to that piece, especially that it's not just an audit to see if you're paying it back properly. It's an audit to see if you accepted it or applied for it fraudulently. And fraudulently doesn't mean on purpose. And I think sometimes people get caught in the place they think, well, it wasn't fraudulent because I didn't do it on purpose. Right. That's not the case.
That's not the case. And I will say this, because I don't want to scare people too much. They're not looking for you miscalculated. They're looking for you just completely misrepresented your position just to get more money. That's what they're looking for. And so they're going to be, people will be audited from this, and there will be people who owe money back. Some people will owe more money to the bank if it was determined that they did not get this loan under the correct circumstances. Their loan will be rejected. It'll all be due at once. There will be things like that happen. Some people may even face criminal trial.
All right. And for those techies out there, I heard you say something about cell phones. So if a person right now is on tap for an upgrade and they want to use some of their funds for an upgrade, can they do that?
No. They can use it for cell phone expenses, your normal monthly bill, but not for upgrades. And in fact, I'm glad you brought this up. Even if you have internet, and internet is a permissible expense. And even if you have, like in our office, we have Netflix and Hulu, that is not a deductible expense, even though we're using it in our office. And a lot of times we have the TV on for our clients that come in. That Netflix, Hulu that I have for the office are not deductible. And so that's not a deductible expense either.
All right. So as it stands right now, I don't see any additional questions coming in. On behalf of everybody watching this, I would say thank you. You provided some amazing information, as we know PG Services always does. What would you say to us? Oh, wait, of course, as soon as I say that, the questions pop in. And the question literally says, hang on. So,
well, while you're doing that, let me talk about a little
yes.
bit about what's going on right now. So I talked a little bit about the economic injury disaster loan. There is still a lot of confusion. So there's the PPP, which is the Paycheck Protection Loan, which covers 8 weeks. There is the economic injury disaster loan, which most people applied for back in late March, super early April. That is now just starting to come through, and that is for operating expenses. You can use that for pretty much anything else that is a business expense. It is a 30-year loan at a rate of 3.75% for small businesses. And so that is a separate loan that's separate from the PPP, and that is supposed to help you sustain your business for about 6 months worth of expenses. So those are coming out. So when you see it, it's not a scam. If you apply for it, the email should be coming from the Small Business Administration, and that is completely separate from the PPP fund. So those are the two different programs that are out there.
Okay, and so the hang on comment came through with the actual question.
Okay.
Can you prepay rent, or you can only go backwards to February the 15th?
Perfect question. You cannot. There is a specific clause in the formula on the forgiveness application. You cannot actually prepay anything. So if you can go back to February 15th and pay some of the old stuff, but you cannot prepay outside of your 8-week period, or it's not forgivable. It's not a forgivable loan if you do that. That portion will not be forgiven.
All right, so that then leads me back to my original statement. I don't believe, okay, then I've been proven wrong again. So what are the steps for reaching out to the lender to do the loan forgiveness? Do I need to contact the lender at the end of the 8 weeks? And I'm going to add a piece to this question. Do you reach out to the lender, or is this a function of accounting?
So you do not need to reach out to the lender, because what's going to happen is, as of July 1st, all of the banks right now are honestly still processing PPP loans. We actually have one of the bankers we work with, Justine from First National. So if you know people who still need PPP loans, there are still funds available in the pipeline. So I just wanted to give a shout out to Justine, because she's been amazing helping our clients to get those loans. And there's some other lenders we work with, but she has been great. The funds are still available. So all of the lenders are still working through their processes. So there's no need to contact them. As of July 1st, you should receive an email that says, we're ready, we're open, here's what our process is, because each bank is going to want different things, because all we have at this point is the SBA application, but each bank can require additional documentation. They may want you to upload. Some might want you to put it in the mail. Some even may want you to email it or put it in their portal. So everybody's going to want something different, because that's how the application process went. So it's not going to be one size fit all. You should not need to contact your lender at all. They should all be coming out with their application process after July 1st. But if you haven't heard from them by July 15th, then I would reach out. But anything like right now, if you call them, they don't have a clue as to what the forgiveness process is going to look like for their particular bank yet, because they're just still processing the loans.
All right, and I say this very cautiously and with a little trepidation. I think that is all of the questions.
That's it. And so if you have additional questions, please feel free to email us at accounting@pgservicesinc.com. We will be doing an additional live. If you have questions that come up between now and next Tuesday, we'll be doing this again next Tuesday, and we may be able to go into more detail. If you send us your specific question, we can put it up and help you to answer it. So if you're interested, please contact us, and we'll send you the link, and we'll also put it in the chat box for all of you as well. So thank you so much for your time, and if you need us, we're here.
Well, I'm impressed. So you did a great job today. Thank you, and thank you for everybody watching. Please look for the live next week. Information on that will be coming. And Joy, will there be someone available to put the links to the tracker in the comment section on
Yes,
the
we'll
Facebook?
do that immediately following the live.
All right. Thank you so much.
Thank you.